This is the We Get Outdoors podcast. My name is Rob Yates and today we are on my patio. Today we're going to talk about a topic that is close to my heart, that's my stomach, and actually a topic that is what's inside my stomach, which is going to be centered around cooking, catering, eating for expeditions. I pride myself that when I take a group away on an expedition, we eat as well on day 21 of an expedition as we did on day 1. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Rob Yates. I think I've already introduced myself. And for the past 30 years of my life, I have been an outdoor professional working at the cutting edge of the professional outdoor industry. I've led and been part of expeditions on every continent apart from Antarctica. I've trained well over 3,000 outdoor coaches, guides and leaders across Europe, North America and Africa. And today I spend my time coaching business owners, outdoor business owners that is, to Amazon and large retail chain proof their business to ensure that they are still relevant in 10, 15 or 20 years time. And the great services that they have also still work and they're still making money and they're still happy and all those great things. So today, the food question really was spurred from a question from a We Get Outdoors tribe member called Josh Glennan. Josh popped a question up. He said, so I have a curious question and I feel the answer is more simple than I'm making it. How does everyone head out into the wilderness for more than a night with fresh ingredients? Do you bring a cooler or is there a method of preserving I'm missing? I'm mostly curious about eggs. I know that laying eggs can stay and don't need refrigeration for a few weeks. So Josh, thank you for the question. Great question. I'm going to do my best to tackle it in under 10 minutes. But this question, frankly, we could go on for days about. Now, if any of you have any questions about things in the outdoors that you would like me to answer, or you'd like me to research and go and ask my extensive network of outdoor professionals about what the answer could be, send me an email, wegetoutdoorstribe@gmail.com, and I'll add it into the podcast list and go and find some answers for you. So huge thanks today for Josh Glennan. And we need to answer this quickly before it rains. Hurrah! So the very first thing, Josh and everybody else who's watching, is there's two deciding factors that I have in my head around food for a trip or an expedition. The first thing is the intention of the trip and the location of the trip. And so there is some trips where if we were doing, massive distance every day and food is just there as a way of shoving energy into the body for absolutely no delight at all, shove it in, maximum bang for your buck, then there's going to be a strategy. It also comes down to within that expedition or that trip into the wilderness that we're making is what's our mode of travel. Because the food that we choose to use will differ depending upon that mode of travel. For instance, if I'm in the African bush in the middle of nowhere, I usually have a fridge freezer plugged into my 4x4, which means I can take all sorts of cool things with me. I've led raft trips where we've had large coolers packed with dry ice that has preserved stuff for a long time. But if I'm going to be, for instance, have a backpack on or be in a kayak, and in particular a backpack, weight and volume becomes a real restriction to what it is that I can take with me. Now, that doesn't mean to say that you can't eat well. It just means to say that possibly more thought and planning needs to go into it. And the other side of this is, what are you going to be cooking on and have to cook with? When we lead, 21, 28 day canoe expeditions, I take an outback oven with me, which means pretty much every day we can have bread, we can have cakes, all sorts of cool things. Whereas if I'm out guiding a 2-week backpacking expedition, obviously weight is going to become an issue. Can we drop off food somewhere via helicopter or vehicle somewhere along the route to collect it? There's all sorts of other things that jump into my mind. But my first hack or strategy that I want to share with you in terms of gourmet cooking is the idea of freezing ingredients, in particular protein, for a long period of time at the coldest possible temperature you can manage. And so a little strategy that I've used really well, and I want to say at this point in time, the food that I avoid with this is chicken and fish. So we're talking very much around proteins, around red meats, and preserved meats. So often, if we want to have steaks, for instance, and the weight isn't an issue, then I will freeze steaks for days and days and days. I'll then wrap them in bubble wrap, wrap them in newspaper, put them in a plastic bag, wrap them in more newspaper, put them in another plastic bag, and then I will go and put them all together, seal them all together so that they stay cold together. And we've had in quite warm temperatures, I'm talking sort of 80 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit, 25-ish degrees centigrade. I've had those in a bottom of a bag in a canoe last for 3 to 4 days before they start to defrost. And then you can go and have fresh steak. Equally, preserved meats like bacon, you can do the same with. And yeah, so that freezing strategy works well. You have to be very conscious, of course, of things like food poisoning. And the moment that they start to defrost, that is like a signal to go and eat them, I guess. Equally, the question I have is, what's wrong with vegetarian? I think with dried beans and pulses and lentils and stuff like that, I think you can still eat very healthily for prolonged periods of time, and then go and be veggie for a while. And that's often my chosen strategy. Is we'll start off with animal-based protein, and then we'll work into vegetarian food and vegetarian dishes after that. And you can do amazing stews, curries, Mexican food, all sorts of things with dried lentils, pulses and beans. And then all you do is put them in an Nalgene bottle for a while and hydrate them, cook them for however long they need to be boiling for, pop them back into the Nalgene bottle, and they're good to go for when you want that meal. Of course, with chickpeas, you can produce stuff like hummus, which is amazing as a protein source, but equally yummy and good for a snack. So one of the secret weapons in my arsenal of catering gourmet food outdoors is this thing just here. This is a dehydrator. This is my small one, and effectively it's got a hairdryer type unit in the bottom. You plug it in the wall, you slice up everything that you want to dehydrate, and it all goes on trays like this, and you stack it all up, stick it on, and normally overnight everything you've put in there is completely dehydrated. You then stick it in a Ziploc bag, and you could put it on the shelf in your larder or pantry, and I've done that, and it generally lasts for 3 to 6 months depending upon what it is that you've dried. Personally, I like to chuck it in the freezer, and that just extends its lifespan ginormously. Now, what does this actually achieve? Well, if we were to talk about an onion, a dehydrated onion takes up the weight and the size, 8 dehydrated onions take up the weight and the size of 1 fresh onion, just as an example. So there you go, you've got loads and loads of onion. I then have I'm a big fan of Nalgene containers. Have a Nalgene container, thunder. And at lunchtime, I take the quantity of dehydrated vegetable, for instance, I want, drop it in the Nalgene container, fill it up with water, stick it in my backpack or in my boat, and it sloshes around all afternoon. And by dinner time, it's reconstituted itself to a crispy form of onion. I use the liquid in here because I don't want to waste anything. I use the liquid in here as part of the liquid to boil the rice or the pasta or pour in with the dish, so you don't lose any nutrients. And then you end up having onions, peppers, mushrooms, carrots, butternut squash, pumpkin, anything you like that's dehydrated there to eat. And equally, you can dehydrate meat as well and go through exactly the same process. So dehydration is my next arsenal. Now, specifically, Josh asked about eggs. Now, eggs in the outdoors are notoriously hard to manage and have a very small amount of bang for their buck, I suppose, calorie-wise, but they're gorgeous to eat, especially if you want to do some baking or make some pancakes or something like that. But they are hard to move about, and they do take up extra space because they're not perfectly cubed. They don't fit perfectly into a particular vessel. So the first thing with eggs, here's an egg. The first thing with eggs is they are notoriously hard to manage because they break. Now, they don't have to break because you could hard boil all of your eggs and take them with you hard boiled. I've had eggs last in a cool space, often with any frozen stuff that I've taken with me, that like the meat I mentioned earlier. I've had hard boiled eggs last for days and still be edible. So eggs, bit of salt, bit of pepper, hard boil them. There's a great strategy for you. I'm going to eat that one in a second. Another great strategy that I learned the other year, which I think is super cool, is to use your wide-necked Nalgene bottle. Nalgene bottles in particular, because they're rock solid. I have driven a vehicle over this one in particular, my 4x4. And what we do is we fill our Nalgene bottle up, solid bottle, wide neck, with water. And we take our eggs and we just start dropping them into the Nalgene bottle. The water pours out the top. We'll just keep doing that. We keep putting the eggs in. You're going to get, depending on the size of the eggs that you put in there, you're going to get wet feet just like me. You normally can get 6 to 8 eggs into a Nalgene bottle. Give them a bit of a shuffle round. Look, in they all go. And then the Nalgene bottle then needs to be perfectly full at the top, which is why we put it in to a full Nalgene bottle to start with and had a bit of spilling, and then seal it up. Now there's 8 eggs I think have gone in there, maybe 7. I didn't count, to be honest with you. And equally, eggs like that won't break, and they will last for anything. I've had 14 to 15 days out of eggs in this way. But you have to think about, what am I doing with these eggs? Normally like a canoe or a raft, I can do this, but to lug this around for days and days and days in a backpack can get blinking heavy. I mean, in there's well over a kilogram or probably 2 pounds of additional weight. So the other thing about eggs is you could dehydrate eggs as well. Not in a dehydrator like this, but you can buy powdered eggs that you reconstitute with water and have as a scrambled egg. And it's not my favourite, but if egg is your thing and that's what you want to have, there's another great way of dealing with eggs. So there's all sorts of different ways of managing your food out there. My personal preference is, unless I'm on one of those trips where food is just an energy source and needs to have zero enjoyment, my personal preference is to avoid your freeze-dried, buy a packet off the shelf sort of stuff from your local outdoor retailer store, just because I think it's boring. I think if the process of sitting around and all cooking together and coming up with a creation is perfect. Some other little thoughts I've got noted down here. Of course, if you're looking for animal-based protein, you can, of course, in Scandinavia, get dried fish. And equally, all over the world, they have different versions of dried meats. Here in South Africa, we have dried beef in sausage and in steak form, you slice up. And we have jerky and pemmican, obviously, in the United States. And so there's all sorts of different options of dried meats that you can take with you and then cut up nice and small and put into a dish that you'd like to eat. So there's a few thoughts on food. So we've concentrated now mostly on the evening meal. There's other meals of the day. I'm a massive fan of rolled oats porridge oats for breakfast, for porridge with some dried fruit and some brown sugar. I find that has the biggest bang for the buck, and I try to avoid the pre-packaged rolled oats because they come with a lot of sugar and they will mess up your glycemic system in your body when you're actually out working. You actually need a form of of less sugar, more bland oats, if I'm to be honest with you. Maybe with the little sunflower seeds or something in it as well, because that will give you a prolonged bout of energy over a longer period of time. Lunches, I'm a big fan of dried meat and crackers, but I try to keep lunches more as a graze throughout the day. So there's some thoughts on catering outdoors. We've kind of taken a year's worth of experience and put it into a very short period of time. However, if you want your question about the outdoors answering, drop me an email, wegetoutdoorstribe@gmail.com. Say question for Rob and chuck it in there, and I will go and find either the answer that I can answer you for, or I'll engage an expert, somebody in my big network of outdoor professionals who can answer it for you. If you like this, I'd really appreciate it if you could subscribe to the podcast, leave a review or a comment, and of course, go and share this on all of your social media platforms to your best mates. Thanks for today's hero person who asked the question, Josh Glennan. Josh, I hope that gave you some insights. And Josh, I look forward to hanging out with you and everybody else who's listening and watching in the very near future. Stay awesome, and remember, we get outdoors.